Hey everybody, how we doing? We're welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. The Commanders had their introductory press conferences for their new offensive and defensive coordinator. We're going to kind of go take a little bit of look at those, play a couple little clips. I'm going to kind of talk about some things from some of the clips that we discuss. I think Dan Quinn really hit the nail on the head, man. Sometimes it's about putting new eyes into the team, putting a new direction, really realizing that certain players weren't getting maximized, certain schemes were only hindering certain players' development and things like that. Cliff Kingsbury did a really good job year one. I'm not downing any of the coaches, but when you have a year like you did, constant injuries and things like that, the defense was very basic as far as honestly, a pretty complicated system, communicational issues on the back end, things like that. There's a lot that goes into it, but we're gonna play some of the clips from these press conferences, and we'll kind of go over them and just like I said, we're going to discuss some of that, and we'll get into this. Darante Jones, defensive coordinator, comes from the Brian Flores background. Also worked with Mike Zimmer and Anthony Vance Joseph and guys like that. So he's been around the block, man. He's been around multiple levels of college, multiple levels of the NFL, things like that. Good teams, bad teams. LSU, I think he's bringing in some good guys on his staff as far as the defensive line coach, and I think that's going to be something that we talk about in this show. Just a couple clips and things like that.
Some versatility players, and I think they can be used in several ways. You look at a Samerstill who was very versatile coming out of college, and the things that he was able to accomplish at the University of Michigan, not only winning the championship, but the way he done it, right, and how he led those guys there. When you talk to the guys from that championship team, everyone points to him as being the leader. You look at Quan Martin, who.
So as he was just saying right there, man, he was talking about one of my favorite players overall roster-wise on this team. Just to kind of get into this, I was going to kind of go over this and just kind of show you. Mikey Samerstill is a guy that I've talked a ton about ever since we drafted him. He's one of my favorite players in the league. I mean, just going off of PFF, man, his defensive grade last year was 51.7. Anybody that knows Mikey Samerstill from his time in Michigan, from his time in his rookie year, man, he was a guy that got really good over the course of the season, his rookie year, especially once he moved outside. We remember how he looked in the playoffs. This year led the team in interceptions, had his hands on probably 4 more. He had a opportunity at 8 interceptions this year and 2 forced fumbles. Mikey Samerstill is a very versatile piece for this team, whether he plays inside or out. I mean, at some point you got to marry him to one of the positions. Doing what the team needs is a great, asset to have. But at the same time, you've got to be able to maximize the position. You got to maximize the player. The versatility to be able to play inside and outside is a great asset for this team. I think you have a similar thing with Trey Amos and things like that. But again, you've got to be able to maximize all the player's development, and developing a player means truly marrying them to one position. Now, versatility, like I said, it's being able to do certain things and mix up the looks, but playing one position and being able to master that position is the most critical thing to the development of this team. Being good at 2 different things is great, and we're going to be able to exploit those type of matchups with Mikey Samerstill, with a Trey Amos, and guys like that, as Quan Martin, as he was getting into, which I'm about to get back into, because I know, a lot of people here have a lot of issues with Quan Martin, but Quan Martin is, as he's about to explain, man, is a very versatile piece. The tackling issues and things like that, coming off of 2 shoulder surgeries in the offseason, I expected him to play a little bit better than he did, but I mean, he had 2 torn labrums one in each shoulder, in the 2024 season, and he played lights out for this defense. But he was playing next to Jeremy Chin, which is something that we're going to talk about as far as the way that Adam Peters has kind of chose to go about the off seasons with this team. We've talked about it on other previous episodes, but when you hand out the 1-year deals, that's fine because you're getting a player that's hungry. They're coming in. But when you have a player that fits, when they sign that 1-year contract, you got to be able to bring that player back on a multi-year deal if they excel on the team like Jeremy Chin did. I mean, now he left because he had other options and things like that, but the only reason you can let a player leave if they do come here on a one-year deal is because you have drafted a player in that draft and they looked really, really good behind them. We didn't have that, and as we saw bringing in Will Harris got hurt. Jeremy Reeves was then forced to step up, which we all know what Jeremy Reeves is on the special teams, and he is a really, really good backup. He's a really good football player. But that said, there's levels to this, and we all know what those levels are. That's why a lot of people have on, whether it's on Washington forums, whether it's on Facebook, whatever forum and platform that you're discussing this team about. That's why so many people are talking about the Caleb Downs in this draft. It's because of the level of safety play. Quan Martin played really, really good next to Jeremy Chin, which would lead me to believe if we were to talk about a Caleb Downs or something like that for this team, who is one of the smartest players that I've ever said. I mean, Joel Klatt said it best. I mean, he's just one of the smartest players I've ever scouted. I do agree with that. I've brought up Caleb Downs and his physical limitations as far as his height, weight, speed for the strong safety position. While he can play over the top and he is a versatile piece, his best position is down in the box, which sometimes I could think that for the same for Quan Martin, but actually what's funny about Quan Martin is he does play over the top much better as far as in coverage and things like that. I think last year you call him cheating up a little bit because he was trying to make up for certain limitations, missing some tackles in big moments. That's something that he can clean up, man. There was a lot of missed tackles. We can all highlight Quan Martin missing missed tackles on the back end, but the truth is there were plenty of missed tackles over the course of the game. We just saw him do it in the biggest moments, and of course those are going to get highlighted the most. But we're going to let Darante continue on the.
I know evaluating him coming out, we were like, hey, is he a safety? Is he a nickel? Is he a corner? That's another guy that has versatility, And then I think when you look at Will Harris and how he's able to move in the line of scrimmage, cover tight ends on the deep halves. You look at a Jordan McGee, another guy who's on the ball, off the ball. The list goes on and on. You look at Javon Kinlaw, who can play all different levels up front. And so the talent is there, the skill set is there. It's our job with the staff to maximize those skill talent. And I'm excited to work with the staff that we have. There's going to be a lot of collaborative effort going forward and the communication. And we get a chance to teach, right? We talk about the foundation from ground up and trying to connect to these players and find out how they learn. And I think that's the biggest thing going forward. To be able to utilize the versatility, you got to figure out how do they learn. We all, as human beings, we learn differently, right? And so each player is going to fall into one of the four categories of learning styles. And it's our responsibility to figure out if they're visual, auditory, read and write, or if it's kinesthetic learners. And that's our job to pull that out of them.
Good afternoon, Coach. David Harrison, WSA 9. Welcome home.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I got more than a few questions I could ask you. Let's start here. How much, obviously you've done a lot of homework and you've talked to some guys like you mentioned. How much do you want to have, how much of the plan for each individual guy do you want to have in place before you meet them? And then how much obviously is going to be dictated by getting to know them further?
So again, I mean, Darante Jones talking about versatility, talking about certain players, Javon Kinlaw. I think there's other guys that we're going to have to go over as far as it comes down into what we're seeing from this defense. There's certain guys that you really, really want to start seeing making an impact on this team. Javon Kinlaw is one of those guys. He was a priority kind of free agent last year. He signed pretty damn early for us. A lot of people thought that we overpaid, things like that. You could say whatever, but I think Javon Kinlaw was in that age threshold that you're looking to do. There's only been a few players that Adam Peters has really signed to term, whether it be Frankie Louvu, Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biotish, or Javon Kinlaw. There's only been a few that he's really hitched his wagon to outside of the homegrown players that we've had. We're going to have to improve on that. I expect this all season is going to be very, very calculated for this team. Daron Payne, a lot of people want to get rid of him because of his cap hit. Well, the truth is, man, is what are you going to get in return? Whatever you're going to get value-wise, you're not going to get that level of player in the draft if you were to trade him. So if you were to cut him, you're saving about probably two-thirds of his contract in cap savings. Well, I mean, outside of that, I mean, a $28 million cap hit, you're not getting a player to the level of Darante paying for less than $28 to $30 million a season. I mean, the Jeffrey Simmonses of the world, the Tavondre Sweat, who's, a guy that I really, really like coming out of the draft. Big body guy from Texas that plays next to Jeffrey Simmons. Those are just two guys. But again, man, these nose tackles and what you saw from Seattle, the pressure that they were getting up front from the middle of the trenches, man. Back when Seattle had the Legion of Boom, they had that interior pressure. They kept their linebackers clean. That's why they used to run sideline to sideline. Then they had Cam at the second level, which is that physical box safety that could cover. Again, 6'3", 225, physical presence. That's what Jeremy Chin offered this defense. That's why even though the defense was bleeding in yards in 2024, I thought Jeremy Chin was a piece that this defense really could have used, and you clearly missed it this last season. Again, part of that was Bobby Wagner slowing down, but I think the notice of Bobby Wagner slowing down sideline to sideline is, again, Jeremy Chin cleaned up a lot of things the year before, so it allowed Frankie Louvu to do the things. Again, Frankie Louvu was a missing piece this year because of the way that we used him coming off the edge. Darante Jones talked about Frankie Louvu and how he used to use him as teach tape for guys over in Minnesota and things like that. Just the way that the energy that he plays with, his style of relentlessness. Frankie Louvu is a guy that I really expect to excel in this defense. There's 4 or 5 real key additions that need to be made on this defense, whether it's this offseason through free agency and the draft. I would expect probably 3 of those 5 to be addressed in free agency, probably coming into the draft, just the way that I've, chalked it up. And I'm not talking about running mock drafts. I'm talking about my grading from my scouting this year. Defense is going to be a value position at almost every selection, whether it's our team or any spot in the draft. It's just the way that this draft is grading out. I'm not saying that there won't be a running back that might be the best player available, because that's going to be very much be the case. You're going to get to around mid-round 2, mid-round 3, them offensive linemen are going to start being the value, because there's some really, really good interior offensive linemen that are grading out really, really high for where that range is going to be. And that's going to be based off of, you get past that first window of edge rushers, that are going to probably go into the 20s. And then you're going to start seeing the second tier of edge rushers, because they're not grading so far behind that first tier. They're going to really, really be fruitful throughout the 20s into like the 40s, 50s range into the second round. And then, like I said, then you're going to start seeing those runs for the interior offensive players, the running backs, the safeties, and the way that the safety class is grading out. Man, it's going to be a very fruitful draft on defense. It's just what it is. I had mentioned Joel Klatt a little while ago. It's funny, I watched his first round mock, and I'm a defensive back at heart. Cornerbacks are what I specialize in. I do a lot of work with the defensive backs as far as what I scout. It's just a position that I've keyed on over the course of, something that I've done really, really well. I'm not patting myself on the back. What it is just the certain techniques and playing styles is something that I really, really it's excelled in when I played flag, pound, whatever it was. The techniques is a very, very technique-driven position. So it's something that I really, really specialize in as far as my scouting traits, what I look at. And then when I watch cornerback play, it helps me scout wide receivers, because it helps me learn the nuances of that position when I'm breaking them down and what's winning on both sides. Joel Klatt had actually picked Mansour Delane for this team, which, I've talked about Mikey Sammerstone on this episode. I talked about Trey Amos a second on this episode. I think Trey Amos is a really, really good coverage corner, man. The coverage ability is there, man, and it's both styles. I mean, systematically, you're good with Trey Amos in any system, whether it's off zone, whether it's playing, lined up like you're in the press and then bailing out into a zone, or then bailing out like you're going into a deep third and then coming back up it, to kind of give a little bit of eye candy to the quarterback, and to make a mistake as he thinks he has a wheel route to the outside, and then Amos is coming up, but he looked like he was trailing back into a deep third. There's a lot of things you can do with Trey Amos, man, and when he has his eyes on the quarterback, man, he gets his hands on the ball. Now we got to see him be able to catch the ball, which he can do. I've seen him do it at Bama. I saw him do it in junior college. I saw him do it at Ole Miss. He got his hands on 1 or 2 last year. I think Trey Amos is fine. I need to see more. The concern I have with Trey Amos Ramos is more the physical tackling ability. I need to see that get cleaned up a little bit. It's not something that I haven't seen him do in college, so it's not something I'm worried about going forward. Honestly, watching this team last year, the whole defense struggled. You see a lot of missed tackles when you see teams not swarm to the ball like Seattle, like the Patriots do. Clavon Chasen is a guy that's going to be a free agent from Seattle, from the New England Patriots, who took a little bit of time to develop. He took a little bit of time to develop in college. I always feel like that's a narrative, man. I always try to involve that in my scouting when I'm breaking down these players. When I'm grading these players, the thing I like to do is I like to look at their trajectory in college through my notes. What did I see from them their freshman year, their first year starting, or their first year in rotation? What did I see from them their second year and third year? And then what was the trajectory of that player? Did it just take them time to get acclimated to the physical difference from high school to college? That's going to probably be a narrative that you're going to hear about from college to high school. College to the NFL. And then we go into, the physical nature of, it's a huge jump. Then you have the SEC, you have the ACC, then you have the FCS, and then the FBS, and then you have different levels of college. So again, did that player take multiple years to, ascend at a FBS level and then transfer into a FCS level, and then they still excelled because they excelled their last year in the FCS, and that's why they got their opportunity at like a Bama or somewhere, wherever they transferred to, kind of like a Jalen Husky and guys like that. If they took multiple years to translate in college and they went through a lower level and then rose to the top, got to the FCS and then performed well, more than likely when they get to the NFL, they're going to have that similar adjustment because they're not the elite level athlete. Sometimes that's why they go in the second to third round. They have elite skill sets in certain facets of the game, and then they refined around those facets. But there's certain physical elements that they lack in their game, so they're going to have to, again, adjust to the level and competition that they're going up in. And the NFL is the ultimate level of competition. So again, but what I was bringing that up for was almost kind of fits this next prospect that I'm about to talk about, was because I listened to the Joel Klatt first round mock. Joel Klatt had given the Commanders Mansour Delane, and that's a player that I really, really like. And it's funny because, and I brought it up, and it's kind of why I went on a little rant about the cornerback position. As a position that I specialize in, man, almost every year that I've done this, whether it was the third or fourth cornerback that was selected, whether it was the first cornerback that was selected, whether I was high on Quinyon Mitchell, PS2, the highest grade that I've given cornerbacks in their class, that guy is generally translated and ended up being that guy. Devon Witherspoon, there's Christian Gonzalez was a guy that I really, really had high grades on. He was a guy that I wanted here. Ron Rivera went Emmanuel Forbes regretfully, but we see what that player has translated to, and you watch their things and you watch the lapses on tape. A lot of that goes into scouting the player and scouting the fit that they are in. When a lot of guys had knocks on Christian Gonzalez because he had a really, really good first year at Oregon, down year, went to Colorado, excelled. And there were just things, or maybe it was the other way around. But again, it's certain things. Mansour Delane coming from Virginia Tech over to LSU, really, really good season. His first year, playing, a pivotal role in that team at Virginia Tech, then had kind of a bad year, transferred to LSU, and now he has had a year that's going to get him drafted in the first round. I'm not saying that he doesn't. This is not a knock on the player at any means, but it's just funny. All the years that I scout these D-backs, man, and I fall in love with these D-backs, this is the first year that there's a class at the defensive back position where I'm more high on the safety class than the cornerback class, and it's just been the way that the prospects have come out over the course of the last couple drafts, whether it is Quinyon Mitchell, who I had a really, really high grade on, regretfully went to the Eagles, but that doesn't that doesn't change my grade just because he went to the Eagles. It doesn't change what I think about the player because he went to the Eagles and one of my rivals. What it is ultimately they hit a home run, and it took a really good scouting to make that pick. Quinyon Mitchell was not coming out of the SEC. Quinyon Mitchell was not coming out of the ACC or anything like that. Quinyon Mitchell he came from where he came from, and to be able to make that pick in the first round, a lot of people would say that was a it was a very, very risky pick. But at the same time, when you looked at the height, weight, speed, you looked at his production, you looked at the way that he played in the Senior Bowl, you looked at how he was one of the best players on the field all Senior Bowl, and then every game that they played, and then the big games that they would play when they go up in them level of competitions, even if the team was getting blown out, there's a certain level of things that you got to scout. PS2 was a more, refined player to scout. It was very, very what you would consider a safer pick, especially in that draft where you had the J.C. Horns and, guys like that. Patrick Surtain coming out of Alabama, you've seen him go up against the Gauntlet. You've seen him go up against the LSUs and the South Carolinas and the Tennessees and, the teams in the SEC that they're all, that are all vying for national champions or playoff spots and things like that. So PS2 was a little bit safer, but again, that was my highest grade player, one of the highest grade players I've ever given. Then the Sauce Gardner who came and excelled as a rookie. I think he's a factor of the Jets. I really hope he kind of turns it back around with the Colts because he is a really, really excellent football player as far as on tape, refinement, the skill set and things like that, and teams just don't throw at him, and they haven't had to with the Jets. You can always go a different direction. At the Colts, a much better defense, you're going to have to test him, and he needs to be able to refine his game and get back to that early level of success that he had coming out of Cincinnati. Again, a prospect coming out of a lower level that you just, it's kind of a risk pick, but when you watch the tape, you watch him at the Senior Bowl, you watch him at the things, it all comes together. And again, it's technical. It's one of the most technical positions outside of quarterback in certain things. Playing left tackle is a very, very technical position, very, very refined position. There's other positions that are very, very instinctual positions like linebacker, running back. You just either have that ability to make that jump cut at the right time or a spin move or feel bodies around you and know how to move around them. Linebacker and running back are very, very much those positions to where edges and offensive tackles, there's a lot of refinement and technique that go into those positions. Wide receiver and cornerbacks is because you're mirrored one-on-one. To where the positions that become instinctual are, I'm in a crowd, I'm moving through the crowd and I'm sifting through the crowd, and I have certain level of traits, vision and reactions that are just they're just instinctual, and you can't coach it, you can't teach it. It's just something that the player either has or they don't. So going back to Mansour Delane, man, this is the first year that I love the safety class more than I love the cornerback class, and it's not a knock on these corners. There's corners that I love in this class, and Mansour Delane is one of them. He's very, very worthy of a pick. I just don't feel like if you're picking a Mansour Delane in this class, would I be mad at the pick? No. Going cornerback from it being one of our weakest positions on this team and addressing it 3 years in a row in the top 3 rounds, whether in Trey Amos, Mikey Samerstill, and Mansour Delane, who are all pretty much my top corners in the class. I do like Cisse from South Carolina. He is a corner that I'm really, really high on. And I think he's actually getting his due now. As far as, PFF has him graded pretty damn high. There's other sites that I've heard kind of mention him before, the end of the season and things like that, where I think it was a culmination of the tape stacking up throughout the weeks. But Cisse is a really, really good player. Mansour Delane coming from Virginia Tech, he is a guy that I'm really, really high on. I just feel like 7's a little earlier for him. And when I look at this draft, when I'm looking at, and again, this isn't a knock on Mansour Delane. This is just a technical standpoint. It's making the best pick for the team. Do I have a higher grade on Mansour Delane than I have on Sonny Styles? No, I don't. So again, it's not a knock on Mansour Delane. I just feel like if Sonny Styles is available, which he was in that mock, I'm picking Sonny Styles. If the board was to fall about that, it'd be really, really hard for me to pass on Jeremiah Love, even though that's not a need position. He's just graded so much more above. He's the best player. He's my best player in the draft. It'd be really hard for me to pick against that, even though it is a devalued position to other people. Other people feel that way. And does running back translate to a Super Bowl? No, but Kenneth Walker was just the MVP in the Super Bowl. You're not trying to chase what other teams are doing, but having that elite level running back, somebody that Jaden Daniels can really, really rely on. When I did my mock draft, my biggest reasoning for picking Jeremiah Love to the Titans was to spell Cam Ward. very, very similarly to Jaden Daniels, who is a bigger, even more of a threat with his legs, a more dynamic, explosive athlete, and honestly, a way more advanced passer. I mean, honestly, if you took Jaden Daniels' legs away from him, he'd still be one of the best throwers of the football in the NFL, in my opinion. What I see from him on tape, even this year without Terry McLaurin and things like that, for him to drop the ball in the bucket to Luke McCaffrey, the throws that he threw to Jalen Lane, whether they were dropped or caught, I mean, just threading the ball outside of the hashes on the second and third and intermediate levels. That Jaden Daniels is a really, really good quarterback, and I really, really, going to the next topic of this, which is going to be David BLough and some of the cut-ups from him. It's basically why Jaden Daniels needs to be in a more traditional offense. It's because if you add a Jeremiah Love and you give him that dynamic, and then have Bill Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt to spell him and give his explosive traits, and then you have Chris Rodriguez, who can come in and close games out in a physical nature, who just runs forward, hits the hole, and a guy that I think would excel in a more traditional offense, being 7 steps behind the quarterback, being able to have that time. I mean, trust me, I really like that from them. So again, this is something that I'm very, very excited to see for this team. I'm going to kind of get to the David BLough clips and things like that, because what I really, really like where I think this offense is headed. I just kind of wanted to touch on that Mansour Lane pick, because I just think there's going to be better value. And for somebody who loves cornerbacks, who always wants to, I want our Darrell Green. I want the Darrell Green of my generation. And I love Mikey Sanders still. He was my favorite cornerback in that class, but he was not my highest grade player in the class. Quinyon Mitchell was. Now, there's a difference between being my favorite and being the best, as far as what I'm seeing on tape. The being the best is a complete, height, weight, speed, physical attributes, clean tape, clean technique, and in everything. And while I do love the way Mikey Sanders still plays, he's not a better outside, can match up between every level of matchup that he's going to face up in the NFL. Mikey Sanders still inside is a higher graded player than Quinyon Mitchell would be. Quinyon Mitchell outside is going to be a higher graded player than what Mikey Sanders still is. It's just the way that it is. But again, they're two different skill sets. But to the David BLough interview and things like that, I'm going to kind of sift through
I was surprised
and chop
you've been
this up.
sitting this role. You flash back to like November. It's kind of a quick rise to get to this spot. What do you think?
Sure. I think, I don't know, surprised. You feel like every step along the way you prepare for these opportunities, and surprised may not be the exact feeling. It might be grateful, incredible.
I'm going to kind of fast forward to some of the parts. Anyway, I really, really do like this hire. I really, really think that we're going to get to the point.
Say you get 65 plays in a game, and that was a situation that I had been a part of previously in a different organization, that a play that I had strong conviction about in April of that year, in May, in June. There were different experiences for Jaden along the way that, he didn't read it exactly how we taught it the first time. Then he learned from it the second time. Then it came up a different way in practice that week. And then, the practice execution became the game reality from that week. And he has a really kind of, he's got a gift. When you teach him something the first time, it just absorbs in there. So, I wouldn't say that was just me or any part of that.
Trust me, Jaden, basically, man, anybody would want to come here and coach Jaden Daniels. But what he is saying, the acumen to be able to learn from his mistakes, the development that you see from him as a passer. Take away everything about the legs. Like, we all know Jaden Daniels can run, but honestly, we see what happens when he is solely trying to run. That is a comfort position for him. All running quarterbacks that were running quarterbacks, they take time to develop as a passer. Jaden is the most advanced passer of the football, who is a run-first skill set type player. And it's why I was so high on him in the draft. He is a little bit smaller frame, and we saw that kind of add up on him this year. That's where running this more traditional offense is going to be. That's why somebody would be so excited to come here and be the offensive coordinator. Now, BLough was already here. He already has a relationship with Jaden Daniels. I think that's going to be key moving forward. The biggest thing to this team is we cannot be so dependent on one player. Terry McLaurin was amazing in 2024. We saw what Jaden Daniels can be with a true home run hitter. He has the best tape of any of the quarterbacks that came out in that class. It's not consistently, but it's the truth. He, in the biggest games, he elevated the team. He elevates the roster more than any other player that came out of that draft. Now, what this team needs to do is get the pieces around him. I have always kind of been, I'm a little bit skeptical about Brandon Ayuk, but if Jaden Daniels wants him and you cannot get Alec Pierce in here, I mean, this team would do itself a disservice to go out and sign Alec Pierce, Walker, the linebacker from Green Bay, and then sign a Kenneth Walker. Like, if this team goes out and picks up 5 of the top 10 free agents that are out there, they're going to do themselves a disservice long-term to the cap. This team needs to build through the draft. We have limited draft capital. What this team needs to do is make 5 or 6 key signings that are from the top 25, top 30. You know, maybe 2 of them guys come from the top 10, whether it's the Quay Walker of the world, and, you know, maybe you get a Clavon Chasen, top 30, 50 free agent in this class. Both of these guys, 25, 26, tread left on the tires. Brandon Ayuk, 28 years old, will probably be 28, 29 next year as the course goes on. The injury is a big concern, but you got to have a dynamic weapon outside of Terry McLaurin. I've talked about it with Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is the guy that I would go out, but I think every team in free agency would want to go after Alec Pierce. He's typically a guy that doesn't hit the market for me, whether it's the franchise tag or other things. The Colts could not franchise him because they're going to probably try to work a deal with Daniel Jones. Do they get that deal done before free agency to where they can franchise Alec Pierce and have the extra time to negotiate with him? Alec Pierce is just a player that I'm not banking on super. He's not a guy that I'm going to talk about a lot because he's a guy that I don't expect to leave. And if he does, he's going to get paid. He's going to have tons of suitors. I don't think he's going to be a value signing. He's going to get paid in free agency. That's what happens. But the yards per catch, I've talked about it with Terry McLaurin and the way that they would complement each other and having 2 guys that can beat you deep. So if one guy is missing time, you still have the vertical element in the offense, still have the physical element of the offense. Brandon Ayuk is a player that would complement Terry McLaurin very well. We have to give Jaden Daniels the weapons outside of Terry McLaurin for him to be able to throw the ball, or he is going to instinctively run the football and continue to get hurt. It is on this team to get the most out of Ben Sinnott, which I think a traditional offense will, because he is more of an H-back like Chris Cooley was back in the Joe Gibbs era. I'm not comping him to Chris Cooley, but when you watch Ben Sinnott at K-State, he was used very much like an H-back. He was a guy that would run, and it's a reason why I'm very, very high on Miles Kitchelman from the Tennessee Volunteers. I did a mock where I got him in the 3rd or 5th round or something like that. And I cannot believe he's not graded higher. He reminds me of a Sam Laporta. He's a guy that can line up in line. He blocks his ass off, can come play from the fullback position and be an inline blocker in goal line sets, or you can run him out of the backfield and catch a wheel route. There's multiple ways to use these guys. Ben Sinnott, Miles Kitchelman, that would be a huge addition in the draft. I would, if I don't really want to prioritize tight end in this draft as much as we need it. I love Kenya Sadiq, but my favorite tight end in this draft is Miles Kitchelman out of Tennessee. I really, really like this player. Big, strong, solid, inline blocker, a weapon out of the backfield. He had amazing tape when Nico Amaliava was the quarterback at Tennessee. This year, all the quarterback drama that went on at Tennessee, Aguilar didn't use him quite as much, and they had the Brazzle and the vertical passing attack that they do there in Tennessee. He just was a little bit of an afterthought this year. He didn't get to stack the years like you like to see, but it wasn't because of him. He still had featured games and things like that. He still flashed. He did all the things that I needed to see from him to sustain his grade as one of my favorite tight ends in this class. I expect this offense to be more friendly. What I really, really loved about what David BLough was saying in this was at some point, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to this because I'm just kind of freelancing on this throughout it, but they had asked him a question about what player he expected to be the most exciting. And it really, really hit me in the heart because he was one of my favorite players in last year's draft, and then we picked him. He was just a player that is never available at that point. And I just said, no matter how much I liked other players on that board at that point, the best thing for this team long term was to go Josh Connerly Jr. And so when David BLough was talking,
stack on that the second time, where can we take his teaching and not assume that he's already reached his capacity to learn? How can we continue to build and take it from when he first got here in 2024, the 101 level classes, and now, how do we take him to every time he takes the field Sunday, he's beating people between his ears and at the highest level, just able to put our offense in the best position possible with his brain. And I think that challenge of giving him new content, new things to learn, new things to understand about playing quarterback in the NFL has been really stimulating for myself, for, the other offensive coaches, Brian Johnson, DJ Williams, Dan, week one. So I think we got a long way to go, but I think it's going to be a fun construction process.
And then in the running back room, how do you view Bill? Like, how much growth potential is there? Or are you a firm believer in kind of that committee approach we saw with Cliff?
I think as everybody saw, all the flashes that Bill had in his rookie season, I think it's really exciting to think about what he can look like in a second year behind this offensive line. And I think, we've got one running back signed, so there will definitely be acquisitions that take place there. And, it depends exactly kind of how the room looks, but man, incredibly confident in what Bill can be in this league as a.
And again, we know there's going to be some additions to this running back room. I highly doubt it would be a Jeremiah Love. There's a Keon Black out there that I really, really love. Whether it be Mark Fletcher Jr., the Miami U running back, that is a big, physical, bruising, intimidating football player. Keon Black is a guy that just falls forward, has such good contact balance and vision. You got Jonah Coleman coming out of Washington. This free agent class is really loaded. Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. I think there's no way that Kenneth Walker leaves the Seahawks, especially after the run that they had. Breece Hall might get franchised. That would just be a Jets thing to do. Best thing the Jets can do for the player and for themselves is to allow him to leave. But that's not how the Jets operate. So, again, where I was talking about Alex Pierce, it's really hard to translate, really hard to foreshadow what's going to happen until the franchise tags are designated for these teams. And a lot of these free agents just don't hit the market. But Breece Hall is a guy that he deserves an opportunity at a fresh start. That is a guy that I would be up there. Again, not trying to go too high. I don't want 5 of the top 20 free agents or 5 of the top 10 free agents. But Breece Hall is a top free agent, and he is a guy. Him and Quay Walker would be the guys that I would prioritize in this offseason. For the linebacker position, specifically, the physical element of the physical nature of the position, there is value in the draft. It would not. Neither of them players would prevent me from picking certain players at certain points in the draft. But their additions to this team would also give me the flexibility to be able to take the edge rusher or a Sonny Styles if he was available in the first round. To be able to complement with Jordan McGee, Frankie Louvu, and then a Quay Walker. You're taking the linebacker room from an older position of need where you need to get faster, younger, and just way better from a talent standpoint. Not calling, everybody knows Bobby Wagner is an elite, great player, but he's not to the level that he used to be, and that's fine. And he is not a long-term piece for this team. Sonny Styles would be. A Quay Walker could be. Frankie Louvu and his dynamic ability to be able to, be used in certain different sets and looks, and then it just takes the room to a position of strength. Like I said, it doesn't even make you need to select Sonny Styles in the first round. Maybe you could go a Mansour Delane because you've addressed, that position, and then Mansour Delane just ends up being your highest graded player because David Bailey or Ruben Bain Jr. is gone. Again, that's where that pick makes more sense for me. Again, it's hard to translate and discuss mock off seasons when you haven't even seen what the free agent additions and the priority and the money that was spent, the way that you're thinking this defense is going to look moving forward. Same with the offense and things like that. Again, it's really hard to predict that until you start seeing some of the moves and the identity pieces that you're going to see moving forward.
Kirk in Minnesota, or Kyler in Arizona for a little bit. It's like you get to. I think when these opportunities come up with the, with the men that we have on this roster, with the coaches that we have on the staff, with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, you have to go for it. I don't ever want to live a life that is timid And so we're going to go for it in a big way, and it's really exciting to think about, having this opportunity now where I'm sitting and going forward and just building it with the group that we have.
Hey there. So you've been here for a bit now. You've experienced the high of the high and a bit lower last year. So what have you learned about this staff and just being here?
So again, these are our coordinators: Darante Jones, David BLough. I'm really, really excited for what the future of this team looks like, man. It's a little bit longer episode than I planned on it to be, but there were a lot of things I wanted to talk about. Welcome to DC. Welcome back to DC for Darante Jones. He's a hometown guy. Local guy, man. He's had the journey. Very intelligent guy. I mean, just listen. I could talk football with that guy all day. You can just tell he's a very articulated speaker, very clear speaker. Has a vision. He's a calm guy, and I like how he lights up. When he was talking about players playing with joy, playing with passion, and things like that, man, that really, really, I mean, we can talk about attitude, we can say all the right things, but I mean, you can just tell he's very, very well articulated, man, and I like the journey that he's got to get here. David BLough, again, I think this guy's going to do a really, really good job. More traditional sets, Jaden's skill set. Again, everything that Dan Quinn, David BLough, even Darante Jones, everybody was saying, the key is Jaden Daniels. It is unlocking Jaden Daniels. It is maximizing Jaden Daniels. It is keeping Jaden Daniels healthy. It is protecting Jaden Daniels from Jaden Daniels. The best way to protect him, give him weapons. Give him a reason to get the ball out of his hands. And then when he does keep the ball, he just savagely destroys the soul of the defense that he's going against, because we covered everything and then he just kills you. That's when Jaden Daniels is killing you. 2024 Jaden, where it was, I will hit Terry, I will hit De'Ami Brown, I will hit Zach Ertz, and they are open, they are available, they're there, I read it, I saw it, I will hit it. Not saying he didn't miss reads, but he will get better at that as he adjusts to the speed of the NFL, as he learns the comfort, and honestly becomes just completely comfortable within himself and having the trust and faith in the weapons and the guys around him. That is why, no matter what I think about Brandon Ayuk, the concerns that I have with the injury, with the multiple ligaments and things like that, and just like honestly, moving forward, if Jaden Daniels is comfortable with him, you have to consider it, because the biggest thing we need to do with Jaden Daniels this offseason is Benson Ott, the guys that we have in the room, the guys we draft, whoever it is, the running backs, the wide receivers, the tight ends, the offensive line. Jaden has to be comfortable and trust these guys and be able to distribute the football to them. We cannot go into this offseason. We cannot go into this season next year banking on Noah Brown to be our number two. You cannot do it. If he stays healthy, great. If he's another piece, great. The pieces, if they excel, if they develop, great. That's what you want to see. You want to see the players develop. But you know what? When players develop, when they have a ton of competition that rises, that elevates the level of play around them, that's when players elevate. Adding a Brandon Ayuk, adding an Alec Pierce, adding a Miles Klitschman, or like an Isaiah Likely or somebody like that in free agency, it would be great. But again, can't sign everybody. Free agency is hard to predict. We're going to get into that as we get into the offseason again. But I just wanted to do this episode on the offensive and defensive coordinator, man. We got to listen to Dan Quinn and them guys talk yesterday. It was a very, very good piece. Again, I thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip podcast. We are Commanders based mostly, but this offseason we're going to talk about plenty of teams. Trust me, we're going to talk about your team here. And it's always exciting to be in the offseason. You find the hope, free agents come in, you got hope for next year. It's a very exciting time as a football fan. So I will be talking about all the other teams too. But again, Commander Space, this is what I talk about on the regular. Really excited for these new coordinators. Really, really excited to see them maximize this roster and what AP and these guys do in this offseason. First thing for me would be we signed Tressway yesterday again. Re-signed him. Congratulations. First sign of business for me would be getting Laramie Tunsil locked up before we go into free agency. That's more of a priority for me. Could it be done before training camp? I don't care. I wouldn't even let it drag out. But that's just me. But again, thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip podcast by fans for fans. This is your host, Cody Potter. Have a blessed week. Thank you. Bye.